I want to see
Lost
now.
media, videos, films, and games that have been lost to time or purposely destroyed. These are some
I'm
of the
interested
darkest
now.
cases, and as the video goes on, it will only get more and more disturbing.
Oh, here we go. Spooky time. Yay. Yay.
It's 2009. The Moment of Truth was a TV show that aired on the American network Fox. The game is simple.
His voice sounds a little crazy, though.
A series of 21 questions under a polygraph test. The questions are designed to get under the contestant's skin and are asked live on air in front of family members, close friends, spouses, and of course, everyone watching at home. Every time you answer a question truthfully, the prize money goes up. Though if you lie even once, you lose.
Do you believe you might have been in love with a former
If you lie
boyfriend on
even
your
once,
wedding
you lose. This is on TV for real.
Yes, I believe I was.
Melanie Williams was one of these contestants, and she first appeared in season 2, episode 9, which
she
is
looked
now
distraught
completely
already.
lost, as only small fragments of the episode has survived. Melanie grew up in a Mormon
Oh.
polygamous community, and we know that she
Yep,
had to
we know what that
expose
means.
the very darkest side of growing up in one through these few surviving clips saved from a trailer of the episode.
Do you think your father was wrong to set you up on a date with a 73-year-old man when you were a teenager?
Yes, of course I do.
Whoa.
That
73.
answer is true.
While living in a polygamous community, did you know of any underage girls who were married to adult men?
What are these questions?
Yeah.
That answer is true.
However, beyond these clips, which
This
were
is
found by
very
references accurate
disturbing
to
clips,
198,
buddy. What
the
are
full
we?
episode
What
is
questions are
completely
these?
lost and will likely never be found.
Why are you asking these
Archives that have
questions?
saved every
I'm
moment
so
of Truth
sorry for her.
episode are all missing the 9th episode of season 2. Though due to not having enough time to answer all the questions in one episode, Melanie appeared in the next episode, episode 10, which is fortunately saved in its entirety. In the episode, the final $500,000 question was asked.
Here's the question.
She gotta read it.
I'm gonna do it for my dad. I'm gonna go for it.
For $500,000, Melanie Williams. Question 21. Do you believe your father, as an adult, has ever had relations with a minor?
What in the world kind of question is this? Seriously, this is on TV? What were y'all watching back then? Huh? What kind of question is that?
That answer is
True.
true.
This is weird.
We might never know why episode 9 has been lost, and we'll probably never find
This is
out
weird.
exactly what questions
What
Melanie
in-
had to
what
answer.
are these
Though due to
questions?
literally having your daughter accuse you of being a criminal, her dad was asked to clarify the allegation.
What is this?
I'm not sure when I did
show?
this. I knew what a minor was. That was a long time ago.
Okay.
You're not sure what it was. All right,
number
pal.
2 was 17. She had just gotten out of high school.
17.
She was her senior year. She was 7.
Huh?
And her father, asked me to marry her and had the thing all set up. And that was the religion I believed in, so I did. I married her.
Later, in 2011, Melanie Williams would make a blog post, The Confessions of a Polygamous Girl Growing Up in a Strict FLDS Community. FLDS being the offshoot of Mormonism that Melanie grew up in. I'll just read to you now a very small fragment that accuses her father of lying about his wife not being 17, but even younger. I'm writing this book to explain why I chose to go on the horrible show Moment of Truth. I grew up in a very strict,
even
closed,
show? What kind of
and
show
secretive
is this
polygamous
shit?
community.
What is this
Women are not allowed
sick,
to speak
sick
up and
show?
tell the truth. and if we do, we are told that we are traitors and will burn in hell. They believe that they are justified because Abraham in the Bible had more than one wife, and he was considered a great man of God. I wanted to go on the lie detector and be a voice for the young girls who are pressured to be married before they figure out who they are. My dad lied on the show about his fourth wife, Joy, who was 14 when she was told to marry my dad. My dad once told me that women are referred to as sheep in the Bible and should be treated
That's
as
disgusting,
sheep. This
bro.
made me sick to my stomach.
Disgusting.
Because why would God create women to be human with a brain and intelligence?
You're hot and in college. You can get all the guys you want. Why me?
To me, you're
Oh
hot.
no.
Why?
I like
It's these Chris Hansen things. Oh my God, these Catcher Predators, boy. Ooh, these be crazy.
Catch a Predator is a reality TV show which I'm sure most of you are familiar with.
Yes, sir, we know.
Undercover journalists pose as
Shout out to
minors on
Gideon catching them today.
and trap dangerous adults looking to engage in illegal activity with children. Once
Wrong
the
with these
adults think
people.
they've arranged a meeting with
Sick.
the minors, they're actually then confronted by the show's host, Chris Hansen. And
Shout
then
out my
they are
boy Chris.
typically arrested by law enforcement. However,
Goat.
sometimes it doesn't go exactly to plan. We're not talking about a lost episode here, but something much more disturbing.
I think I've known about
that
this
will
one
likely
before,
never be
though.
found. Bill Conrad was one of these predators.
I don't know, is that him?
attempting to
I
meet with
swear I don't
children
know if
through
I've seen
online
this
chat
before.
rooms. And Bill wasn't just anybody. Bill Conrad was a well-respected and well-known district attorney who spent most of his life in Terrell, Texas.
You were a
where he
district
grew up.
attorney,
In
bruh?
2002,
Really, dude?
Conrad decided to run for district judge, representing the Democratic Party. Though he had 7,900 votes in his favor, he lost the election to his Republican opponent, Howard Tigert, who had 9,800. However,
Damn.
by 2006,
Blew your
it
ass
seemed like
out.
he was getting his career back on track.
Pause.
He became the chief felony assistant district attorney for Rockwall County, and he
The
appeared to
build
be
is
enjoying
crazy.
his work again. That wouldn't last very long. One of the sting operation teams collaborating with Hansen's show was called Perverted Justice, and they would set up accounts on AOL and MySpace, posing as children and young teens. And they would be quite successful, capturing multiple
Oh,
would-be predators
nah.
during their time.
They was on timing like that even back then. Oh, it's like the stuff that we see today's age on like YouTube videos and like the shit that we see on TikTok or Twitter, and they catch these motherfuckers. These motherfuckers was really like, bro. They're you know, I mean, like Catfish too, like the TV shows, like exposing these people, but like them going in AOLs and undercover using voice chats and MySpaces and bruh, they're going undercover and posing and voice changing properly back like yo.
Time, as older men would
They
often
was
message
on
and
it.
engage with all the fake trap accounts, with INXS00, a 19-year-old college student, being one of these predators. Our 19-year-old, who was actually in fact Conrad, started a conversation with a 13-year-old male decoy simply called Luke. The conversation quickly became extremely graphic
And most of them
explicit,
freaks
with
do be
Conrad
on
sharing
that
very
other side of the
specific
spectrum.
photographs of himself with Luke. The chat messages then devolved into plans for the two to meet, and Conrad expressing his desire to take more photographs with Luke involved. They would then have a conversation over the phone, with an actor posing as Luke, helping to arrange a meeting between the two. Though on the day that Conrad had planned to actually meet the boy, his sister, Patricia, arrived at his house unexpectedly, completely stopping him from going. Then, soon after, all went cold. Conrad deleted his MySpace account, stopped messaging Luke, and for all intents and purposes, seemed to completely shake himself out of his illegal plans by covering up all traces of it. The situation grew stranger when, in a controversial move, NBC coordinated with local law enforcement to obtain a search warrant for Conrad's home to approach him directly. The television crew and law enforcement officers arrived at his house in Terrell, Texas.
They
planning
pulled
to
up on, bro.
confront the man on camera. Now, it's important to
On
note
television.
that while Conrad had not yet met with any children or people posing as children, the images and messages that Conrad had sent were already enough to get him arrested. On the morning of November 5th, 2006...
See. Now this was all already enough, right? But in that Gideon video, when he caught dude, the only reason that dude that they caught, that freak of nature, the only reason that he even got put behind bars was because he tried to evade arrest and because he caused vandalization to the actual owners of the house that they did this in. So if he had not did that and vandalized them or assaulted Gideon, they wouldn't have even really took it as serious. But this right here just said that this was all enough information, which is the same exact information that bro had, and pictures, all evidence to put them behind bars and lock them up.
The local Murphy police, along with the NBC crew, were determined to arrest Conrad, who was the most well-known person they had ever targeted in one of their sting operations. They were worried that if they
I was around the same age too. 2006 is crazy.
Important evidence. With this in mind, a team of 10 NBC crew members, including the host Chris Hansen, went to Conrad's home, planning to confront him at his door. The camera crew that were hiding outside Conrad's house had noticed that someone seemed to be inside, though acting sneakily, like they didn't want to be seen. With the warrant in hand, the police then tried to enter the home, for then no one to answer other than the barking of Conrad's dog. Realizing they needed to take stronger action, a SWAT team was called in to break into the house. When the team arrived and finally entered Conrad's home, they didn't find him right away. Splitting into two groups, they searched the house.
Oh, he was hiding in there.
Found Conrad in a hallway. He was holding a gun and calmly told the officers he wouldn't hurt anyone before suddenly ending his own time on Earth. The SWAT team tried to help him, and the leading lieutenant quickly told Hansen what had happened. Conrad was then rushed to hospital but died an hour later. Immediately after, Hansen's show and the police
appreciate that follow
of criticism for their handling of the situation. Conrad's sister, Patricia, publicly criticized the police, the NBC crew, and perverted justice. She accused them of running the operation just to make money and boost TV ratings. She blamed these groups for Conrad's death. The backlash from the incident and concerns from advertisers eventually led NBC to stop the show by June 2008.
So that's the reason this show stopped.
Or feel responsible for Conrad's death.
I didn't even know that.
Sort of way. Since the incident, most of the material related to Conrad's case, like footage, chat logs, and photos from the scene, though lost for many years, have since been made public. However, the final piece, an audio tape of Conrad's final words, recorded by the police to be used in the cancelled episode, and that was later obtained by NBC, has never been released. And
they got them tapes locked away for good. Oh my gosh. They got those locked away for good. Oh no. It's a football match.
It was the 15th of April, 1989. A semi-final football match was taking place between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest, and Hillsborough Stadium was filled to the brim with fans that day, with Liverpool fans in particular having shown up in huge numbers. There have been concerns with the stadium's safety for decades. In 1981,
too many people.
Just 8 years prior, 38 people were injured in a crush because the police had opened an exit gate.
I can tell what's coming here now.
335 additional spectators to surge into an already overcrowded area. While the incident wasn't fatal, it showed how flawed the layout of the stadium was. The stadium was modified after this with fencing. They created separate pens to manage the crowd movement. But these small changes did not address the safety enough.
Pens? What are you trying to hold them in like they're pigs?
Who had no experience managing large football matches at Hillsborough, replaced a more seasoned officer just weeks before the fated Liverpool-Nottingham match. On the day of the match, thousands of Liverpool fans arrived late due to delayed buses and trains, and the congestion started to build up.
It's packed already just outside, dude.
Despite what they should have learned from the crush of 1981,
oh my
there were
God.
no police cordons to manage the flow of fans. The situation near the gates grew increasingly chaotic, and by 2:35 p.m., it became clear that a significant intervention was needed to prevent.
Bro, you know what's gonna happen, dude.
Decision at 2:48 p.m.
Plus, bro, it's two different countries. You know how it is today when it's two different countries playing and they're in the same arena. It gets wild. You know, like these people are willing to die behind these teams for real. This ain't no joke. So that I know that when the two sides get to bickering and arguing, it ain't good when there's this many people.
Chief Duckenfield, the ground
on opposite sides,
after being informed that fatalities were imminent unless action was taken, Duckenfield ordered
crowding, pushing, trampling, stampedes, everything's about to happen.
However, normally there would be police there to stop the incoming crowd as the stadium was already full, but there were none, due to the police's terrible planning and management and the fact that Duckenfield completely neglected it.
So the people just started coming in because there's nobody there to stop them from coming in. They just came in.
2,000 fans entered the already overcrowded viewing stands. As the match itself started, the situation in the pens worsened. 4 minutes into the game, a goal attempt by Liverpool's Peter Beardsley hit the crossbar, causing the crowd to surge forward towards the pitch for a better view. The crush barriers, some outdated and corroded, gave away under the pressure, causing many to be consumed and trampled by the crowd. It wasn't realized quite what was happening until it was already too late. The emergency response was disorganized, chaotic, and delayed. Ambulances were slow to reach the scene, and some police officers mistook fans trying to escape the crush for pitch invaders, pushing them back into the dangerous areas where some of them were then killed by the crush. All in all, 94 fans lost their lives that day, with an additional 766 people being injured. 3 more people died due to complications after, with 14-year-old Lee Nicole passing away later in hospital, and Tony Bland and Andrew Devine both being put into vegetative states due to being suffocated so long in the crowd. Andrew would eventually regain consciousness and live for another 32 years after being told by the doctors that he would live a maximum of 6 months.
Well, shout out to him.
He had to communicate through a special device as he could no longer speak or move properly.
Oh my God, dude! Just from the security not being able to keep, police weren't paying attention. Poor planning. We see it every time. History repeats itself with these poor planning. These events. You gotta know people wild out. People are gonna do crazy things because everybody's high up on their emotions. Everybody's high off life. Everybody's trying to get to see what's going on. They're trying to feel the rush. They're trying to see the excitement. This and it was like this in the 90s. Sports was booming back here, everywhere. Back then, and look at it now. And there's still crazy shit that happens to this day.
And not that he had mandated the gate to be opened. Duckenfield's lie was then spread to the newspapers and television stations. The Sun newspaper, which ran a headline,
something that could have been
accused the Liverpool fans of being drunk
stopped
and violent
before it got any worse.
Caused the disaster. Though there should have been a golden bullet to stop all the false narratives. Hillsborough was unique in the fact that it was one of the most surveilled stadiums in England. Managed by Roger Haldsworth, the surveillance system included 20 cameras that were active that day, controlled by the club, focused mainly on the gates and car parks, as well as 5 more police-operated cameras that covered the broader areas inside and outside the stadium. Those cameras could have captured the failures of the police and showed that there was no forcing into the stadium. However, Police Camera 5, that could have provided crucial information, mysteriously didn't save any footage of the disaster. It was initially claimed that it experienced some sort of fault.
Wait a minute. You're telling me they got all of these cameras and it wasn't recording this?
Roger claims that he remembers it being fully operational during the crush. Merely hours after the tragedy, Roger extracted the tapes out of the cameras to stop them from being automatically erased. And maybe suspecting that something strange was going to happen, Roger then locked them in a cupboard to stop anyone from taking them. But then he also thought that anyone could force open the lock if they were determined to do so. So he locked the door of the room behind him and assigned a guard to not let anyone in, including the police. Though hours later...
Including the What? You're locking tapes under lock and key?
Later, when Roger returned to check on the tapes, 2 of them were missing. While it's believed that the footage actually on the tapes may have not been crucial in the investigation, it can never be known, as those tapes are officially lost media. And it still begs the question,
literally lost media.
Who would steal them, and why would they try to steal them unless they thought it contained crucial evidence of...
There's no way this is this deep.
What really happened
over a football game?
Documents. It was later discovered
football
statement on purposely trying to protect
the tapes
had been changed and cut out. So in the official police reports, it's never even implied that he did lock them away in a cupboard. And they report that they somewhat randomly went missing, which I think definitely points to a police cover-up of whatever was on those tapes.
I'm telling you, because the police, you see, they be trying to cover themselves. They always try to cover their backs. They always try to cover their backs.
Noah's Ark from 1928 is notable in the history of cinema not just for the scope of the film, but also for the horrific events that occurred during its production. Directed by Michael Curtis, known later for classic...
Wait, I think I know about this one. I know about this one.
Part talkie, which just meant a film with dialogue, as most films were silent at the time, and part epic, that combined the biblical story of Noah's Ark with a bizarre conjunction of a World War I narrative. The production of Noah's Ark was a massive undertaking. The film featured large-scale sets and groundbreaking special effects for the time.
Crazy
but when
stuff
it was released
back
to a limited audience in New York, it was met with very harsh words from film critics, with one even calling it the worst picture of all time. And it was likely for good reason, as firstly, the film was just very long and quite boring, so for the wider release, they decided to cut out 35 minutes of the film. Keep that in mind. The true
35 minutes
film should have been the epic flood sent down by God to drown out the entire world.
Yeah. This is the part that I remember right here. I actually learned about this in class. Back when I was in there. I learned it was in one of my art classes. We was looking at some shit. I remember this though. This was it. We were looking at like film, and it was because of this very scene right here that he was using actual water, like tons and gallons of like water gushing, like actual real deal water. He was shooting these places, and there's no takes, no cuts. It's just he just kept on going until he got the right one, and it's just like he was like drowning these people.
How would
bro.
they pull that off in the 1928 film? Well, the ambition of the film was matched by its budget, making it one of the most expensive productions of the era.
And was one of the most expensive.
35 minutes cut, a substantial amount of it was the flood itself. To create the great flood that God sent down, the production used 2,300,000 liters of water and poured it over 7,500 extras.
Yeah.
And among the extras, a young John Wayne, Andy Devine, and Ward Bond could be found. The immense rush of the water was so overpowering that 3 of the extras would actually lose their lives and drown, with 35 different ambulances being called to tend to the many more wounded. The now completely lost original cut was apparently a lot more disturbing than the official release, as it featured much more footage of the actors struggling, some of which featuring the soon-to-be drowned extras. Noah's Ark is almost single-handedly responsible for putting restrictions and regulations on stunt scenes in films.
Oh my god, so nostalgic right here. This right here.
WWE SmackDown versus Raw 2008.
Whoa, hold on. We had unreleased games. What they do in this game? Hold on, now you done spiked my interest. WWE. Hold on, what are we talking about here?
By THQ. And one of the most notable features introduced in this game was the inclusion of distinct fighting styles for the wrestlers, each with their own set of strengths and weaknesses. This added strategic depth to the gameplay, and I'm only mentioning it because it serves as one of the only pieces of evidence left for this lost media. During the development, it faced many delays, some just due to time constraints, but also because of an event that occurred in June of 2007, months before the game was set to release. The game coincided with significant events within the WWE universe, notably the 2007 WWE Draft, which occurred during the game's development period.
Draft.
Saw various wrestlers, including 2-time World Heavyweight Champion Chris Benoit, being drafted.
Man, oh man. There go that man, Chris Benoit. R.I.P. Man, that story's crazy too.
Picked to fight against different people, including another wrestler.
Same like Eddie Guerrero too.
However, when Benoit didn't
some crazy stories
fight that had been planned and scripted for, everyone started to become uneasy, especially because a close friend of Benoit's, Chavo Guerrero, had received a series of strange texts from Benoit. The dogs are in the enclosed pool area, and the back door is open, and another simply of his own home address. The very next day, the police would arrive at Chris Benoit's house, and there they would find his wife Nancy and his 7-year-old son Daniel completely lifeless. Moving through the house further, they found the story. Chris, as just after he destroyed his family, he decided to end his own life. Immediately after, the WWE took immediate steps to distance itself from the wrestler, who had been one of its top stars, as they started removing all mentions of Benoit from the WWE
and so is that dude right there, Vince. Prince.
his matches out of any
You ain't so
official
slick
video
either.
releases. This extended to the game as well, and was difficult because Benoit had been so deeply integrated into various aspects of it due to being such a big star. His character, voice lines, and specific wrestling moves were all nearly removed. The developers managed to release the game on schedule in November, just in time for Christmas shopping season.
So somebody found a move in that game, or a glitch where it had the moves set still in there, maybe?
Perhaps due to the rush of trying to get the game out before the holidays, some remnants could be found of Benoit's influence in the game files, like his crippler crossface move that could be accessed if you hacked the game. Pre-release builds featuring Benoit certainly exist, but have never been released.
Freddy Krueger? How fitting for Halloween right now.
And as is reported,
that's crazy.
Originally, Benoit was featured prominently on the front cover of the game. However, after his death, the cover was redesigned to feature John Cena, The Undertaker, and Bobby.
And this is the cover that we got. 2008. SmackDown versus Raw. Dang, man.
Lashley instead. It's not exactly clear who.
It's a real dark story right there.
But he, not just in the game, has effectively been erased from WWE history.
It's a real dark story right there with that.
Police have identified the gunmen as Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. They apparently belong to a clique of outcasts in the high school called the Trenchcoat Mafia.
Eric Harris
and
Dylan Klebold
already sounds crazy.
Involved on the attack on Columbine High School, which ended up being one of the worst in modern American history. The news at the time tried to shift the blame onto a lot of different things, like Marilyn Manson and rock music, as well as video games.
Columbine,
being specific, the game Doom. Now, we briefly touched on this on my disturbing video game iceberg, but Eric was not just a fan of the first-person shooter, but he also enjoyed making custom maps for the game. Most of these maps are already widely shared and playable today, with most of them being boring, empty levels without really anything interesting about them other than their author. In the notes of one of his maps that are still playable to this day, bricks.wad, he thanks his friend Dylan for helping him playtest the map for any flaws. UAClabs.wad is the most infamous of these maps. It was made in 1996, 3 years before the attack, and is thought to be modeled after the school itself. It is the only one of his maps that has enemies in it, and it is incredibly hard to beat, as you start outside the building with only a pistol, though you can eventually upgrade to a shotgun, which was Dylan's choice of weapon during the real-life event. You can theorize endlessly about what the map would have been used for.
Nah, that's some
if
deep
they truly
shit.
used it to run some sort
That's
of
scary.
practice run of their attack, but that's not what we're looking at today. Eric created a list
I
of
got
all his
chills,
maps.
bro.
Here you can see
Goosebumps.
UAC Labs, as well as Bricks mentioned earlier. But the majority of these maps are completely lost to time, despite being publicly available for download on Eric's AOL page. The only true remaining evidence of their existence is 3 screenshots taken of the lost maps by Eric himself. One of realdeath.wad, one of TechOut, and one of Thrasher. The FBI no doubt has access to these maps, as the unplayable and lost ones are written about in the 11,000 page
Bro, it being connected to a game is crazy though. Like,
contained, but
I was trying to connect this to a
is
game.
one Eric wrote about personally, stating, "Lots of the rooms
He
and
really sit here
secrets in
putting
this
this
place come directly from my imagination.
in a game?
So you're basically running around in my own world. A person could write a freaking book on all the symbolism and double meanings used in these levels." Tier was by far the most elaborate map, as it contained multiple
What is he
levels.
even saying?
And during its development, Dylan would draw out a floor plan of the second layer of the map, which shares a slightly eerie resemblance to the library of the real-life school where most of the killing took place. Tier was also the last of the maps to be made by the pair, and it would have been made around the same time that they were really starting to finalize their plans. Though we might never know what those maps truly
One of the
held,
most
Eric and Dylan's basement
historic,
tapes are some of the best
terrible
documented
things to come out
media
right there.
of all time. They were a series of video recordings made by the pair, which have become a central element in the study of the tragic event due to the insight they give into the killer's thoughts, motives, and preparations leading up to it.
This is
The tapes
crazy,
are
bro.
recorded primarily in the
The
basement
fact that
of
this is
Eric
even
Harris's
going on
home.
to this
They
day.
included a mix of direct
Yo,
addresses to the camera.
you need help, bro? Get help. Like, actually, go get help. Like, actually. Like, go get help. Talk to somebody. Seriously. It's never a good idea to try to even resort to any type of violence of any kind. don't even take it to this type of level of extent.
Where
I
Eric
just
and
don't get
Dylan
it.
outlined their motives for the upcoming attack, displayed their arsenal of weapons, and discussed who exactly they wanted to target.
It'd be better to live to see the next day.
December of 1999, which would have been 8 months after the attack. Time magazine journalist Tim Roche was granted exclusive access to view these tapes and wrote a subsequent article about them. At this point, the families of the victims had no idea the tapes existed and were obviously shocked and angry at why this journalist had been prioritized over them. So to soothe the families, the Jefferson County authorities, the people who were handling the tapes, organized a private viewing for them to witness them all. The tapes were then sealed securely until 2003, when one of the tapes, being titled Rampart Range, was released. It featured the two shooting guns at a shooting range and generally having fun with their weapons. The following year, in 2004, probably the most famous out of them all was released, being Hitmen for Hire, which was actually a school project the two had made for economics class. It featured the two acting in their now iconic trench coats, walking around the school they would soon destroy, extorting money from people in order to protect them from bullies. The third and last piece of the basement tapes to ever be released was a fragment of another film they made for school called Radioactive Clothing. However, that
this is crazy, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
May have been completely lost, as the remaining unreleased
This
ones
is menacing.
were approved for
Scary.
complete destruction by the sheriff of Jefferson County
Just thinking.
in 2011. A spokesperson for the county then confirmed their destruction in 2015, stating that with the consent and support of the families of the victims, the tapes were erased entirely. The only surviving proof of their existence are written in the evidence documents detailing what happens in them, being evidence number 265, 298, and 333. Most of the tapes are all very detailed and very personal accounts relating to the two's plans for the attack itself. In 265, Eric and Dylan are speaking casually about their desire for the world to see these recordings after the destruction of the school, which they refer to as their masterpiece. They express a hope that the videos will help the world understand their motivations. As the tape goes on, Eric and Dylan showcase
What
the collection of
motivations?
firearms and explosives, and their plan to commit credit card fraud to get the money for more resources for their special day. The camera then cuts to a later segment where the two delve deeper into their plans. They boast about the number of people they intend to snuff out. The first tape, labeled Reb's tape from evidence item 298, captures a crucial moment in the timeline leading up to Columbine, with Eric and Dylan documenting their final preparations. The first tape begins with them in a car, setting the stage for their final errands of the attack. Eric, using his nickname Reb, narrates that they are on their way to acquire the last pieces of their arsenal. The tape then cuts to a more intimate moment with Eric alone. He addresses his family directly, offering apologies for the pain he knows he will cause, emphasizing the fact that they are not to blame for his actions. He then shows off his
What do you mean? And who are
as the writings of
Then who's the one who's pulling the triggers, buddy? What are you talking about? You're not the one. You're planning this whole thing out. What are you talking about?
God, which shows quite how delusional Eric was as he flips through the pages filled with ideological statements and drawings. A lot of them related to the video game Doom, which I'm sure, as you already know, had a definite influence on his and Dylan's imaginations and planning. The second, less intense tape included in Evidence 298 contains casual footage of Eric and Dylan and two other peers, likely captured during another school project. Although this tape does not directly relate to the planning, its inclusion in the evidence shows the kind of double lives the two were leading. Ordinary high school activities intertwined with their preparations. The final lost tape, included in Evidence 333, starts with Eric Harris in his home, where he's filming various weapons laid out on the floor. The scene then changes to Harris alone in a moving car.
And it's always, bro, they're always recording or documenting this somehow, some way, every time. They're doing something behind the scenes and filming it for everybody to see.
Tearing up and crying at the thought of himself being dead in just under 3 weeks. He was clearly extremely delusional, as you could tell from the fact he's sorry about the missing prom, but not for the crime he was about to commit. Next, the tape shows Dylan and Eric in Dylan's bedroom, where they're seen securing weapons to their clothing, the very same clothing that they would be found dead in. As the tape nears its end, Eric films Dylan delivering a goodbye message to his friends and family. Dylan then reciprocates,
It's just like,
filming
dude.
Eric as he does the same thing.
Conspiring something like this to do. Oh my god, it's just like, why is this something that even happens today, bro? Like, what? Why? What is it? I don't
The
get
final
it.
exchanges are very
Why
simple,
do this?
yet very foreboding.
Who just
Eric
has an
says,
idea to
"That's
do
it.
this?"
Sorry, goodbye, followed by Dylan putting his face into the camera, also saying goodbye. The very last frame of the tape is extremely haunting. A simple static shot of a sign in Eric's bedroom. The sign reads CHS written in black ink next to an image of a bomb with a lit fuse and the word clue written in bold. This final frame was filmed approximately 30 minutes before they commenced their attack.
Wow. Very disturbing. Wow. Oh gosh.
May 1989.
That's a lot to
the
take
British
in, for real.
television program Bullseye has already been running for 8 years. 3 teams of 2 compete to play darts and answer trivia questions, with one player on each team being the brains. with
Yo,
the
what
other
was
being
the
the
shows
darts
on
player.
back in the
John
day,
Cooper
man?
was a very
For
normal,
real.
unremarkable contestant. He was averagely good at darts, and the host of the show, Jim Bowen.
Why don't they
chatted
do
to
this
him
kind of
about
stuff
his
today?
Unusual hobby.
You've got an unusual hobby, John, haven't you?
Oh yes, the scuba diving.
The scuba diving.
Yes,
And
no.
apparently it's the place to do it down there, isn't it?
Oh, we've got coastline.
Because is it the mountains are sort of inverted and you've got all these...
Well, we've got deep water where you can sort of swim over mountains and all sorts.
Yeah. We hope you all have a good night with us. Give them a round of applause.
If only Jim knew how unusual John truly was. In the game, John and his partner scored the lowest of all the teams and were first to be eliminated. However, they had a chance to win a star prize by gambling the small prizes they had already won, though again, they failed by not scoring enough and walked home with nothing. Now, the world would largely forget about John Cooper, the coastal scuba diver, and the episode today is mostly lost, with only these small clips I've been showing you remaining, and it's for a very, very specific reason, where John's true, unusual hobby was uncovered. John Cooper
Whoa.
was a serial criminal. In 1998, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison for an armed robbery and burglary, but that was merely the tip of the iceberg.
Huh?
Using advancements in forensic technology, the police would start looking over some cold, never-before-solved cases again, where they would eventually find out the true depravity of John, with him now on their radar. In 1985, 4 years before his appearance on Bullseye, Richard and Helen Thomas were home on a normal evening. Though unbeknownst to them, John Cooper was creeping outside, planning his next burglary. He broke into the home occupied by the 2 siblings, though it's thought that John
And you
was
on
only aware
TV.
that Helen was home and thought he could easily overpower the lone woman. But upon discovering that her brother Richard was home, John decided it would be easier to just end the both of them with his sawed-off shotgun, burning the house down with them to discard any evidence. John would be connected to the
Burning the
murders
house
by matching
down.
the shotgun residue left at the scene with his own. Though you'd be mistaken if you think John was finished with a double murder. 3 weeks before his Bullseye appearance, John would be out again on the prowl with his same shotgun.
Bro, and it's that bro did this, then he did some more, and then he went on TV, and like,
Lurking in the bushes of a
what?
forest path, waiting for any people trying to enjoy a nice quiet walk.
Bro, they're
Peter
literally just
Wendy Dixon.
enjoying a walk. Man. Moment of silence.
Were those unfortunate people.
R.I.P.
John would ambush them again in a robbery, demanding their bank cards, PIN numbers, and any cash they had on them. Peter luckily had around £300 on him, but John was not satisfied. Tying the couple up, he proceeded to Gwenda before taking both their lives with his prized shotgun. They connected John to
Wow,
these 2
it's
murders
fucking sick. This fucking sick ass. This fucking sicko.
because his same shotgun still had fragments of Peter's spilt DNA on it after all the time had passed. John Cooper continued with his criminality until the late 90s, where he again ambushed a group of 5 teenagers. At gunpoint,
Kids.
Cooper systematically took 2 of the girls from the group, one being 16 and the other 15, and took his turn each of them, whilst all the
Oh,
DNA
yeah,
evidence
nah.
was strong enough to convict.
Oh, hell no. Dude. Oh my God. I want literally wish nothing but the worst for this nigga. Wish nothing but the absolute most disgusting, vile, criminally, detrimentally, terrifyingly, nightmarish hell that this nigga deserves to sit here and like fucking suffer for the rest of his fucking miserable, disgusting, useless life. It's disgusting.
John, his appearance on Bullseye was used
Disgusting.
to link him to a suspicious man an eyewitness described seen around the crime scenes. Before the case of Peter and
Disgusting.
Brenda was solved, the couple's deaths were referred to as the Pembrokeshire murders or the coastal murders, which puts John's knowledge of the coastline due to his scuba diving into a slightly different context. John Cooper was diagnosed with psychopathy late in his life, and aside from the few small clips, the full episode of him on Bullseye has been completely scrubbed from existence.
It's
Just
disgusting.
before dawn, a van carrying 50 victims
Oh my
arrived
God.
at Evergreen Cemetery.
Yo,
Inside,
these are dark. These are dark. These are very dark.
small pine boxes. These are the bodies of unidentified children. In place of names,
and there we go, of
just
course.
numbers on the boxes.
In 1931, James Warren Jones was born. Jones was influenced early by an intense interest in religion and social issues. His upbringing in rural Indiana, combined with an isolated and lonely childhood, seemed to inspire a slight sensitivity to racial and social inequalities, which would later become a core aspect of his spiritual teachings. Jones began his foray into religious leadership in the 1950s, after
Teachings,
attending
huh?
Indiana University and later Butler University. During this time, Jones was influenced by the radical preachings of Father Divine, a charismatic leader who founded the International Peace Mission movement. Father Divine's blend of
Kids,
social
though?
activism and spiritual absolutism was likely life-changing for Jones, who started to shape his own versions of socialist and Christian doctrines. In 1955, Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in Indianapolis, which he marketed as a progressive organization that advocated for racial integration, a certainly rare stance during that era in the United States that made him a very controversial figure, though earning Jones a reputation as a champion of the oppressed and marginalized. Jones's charisma and purported healings and miracles added to his allure, making the People's Temple a magnet for those disenfranchised with traditional society or churches. However,
Walking
beneath
around
the
like the man,
surface,
huh?
Jones enforced strict control over his followers, demanding absolute loyalty and increasingly isolating them from outside influences.
See?
In the early 1970s, amid growing scrutiny and accusations of financial and physical abuse within the People's Temple, Jones and his many followers relocated to San Francisco, California. Though growing more paranoid and isolated, he decided to further remove his congregation from external scrutiny and to create what he billed as a socialist paradise. Jones and over 1,000 of his followers established the People's Temple Agricultural Project, a remote settlement in
The
Guyana,
PTAP.
better known now as Jonestown. It was here that the ideals of the People's Temple were to be realized, and what Jones promised would be a utopia free from the corruption of the outside world.
You try to run away with your own followers and make your own civilization.
November 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan
Trying to move a
led
little
mission
dude
to
different.
Jonestown after receiving reports from former People's
You're not
Temple
the Messiah,
members
bro.
and concerned relatives. They claimed that the residents were being held against their will in oppressive conditions. Jonestown was largely populated by American citizens, prompting Ryan to take direct action. And accompanied by aides and a crew from NBC who filmed all the footage you've been seeing. Ryan arrived at Jonestown on November 17th.
Wow.
Initially, everything seemed fine. The group was given a tour, spoke with cheerful residents, and attended a music concert. However, as the visit progressed, the behavior of the residents appeared increasingly rehearsed and tense. The gravity of the situation became clear when several members secretly asked Ryan to help them leave, describing Jonestown as a communist prison
Oh,
camp.
no.
Confirming the suspicions of the coercion, Ryan agreed to help these individuals escape. And despite the mounting tension, Jones conducted a seemingly cooperative interview with NBC and allowed the defectors to prepare to leave.
Warning,
The next
y'all.
morning, however,
Be ready.
on November 18th, as Ryan, the defectors, and the NBC camera crew headed to the nearby Port Kaituma airstrip trip, they were ambushed by the armed loyalists of Jim Jones, who Jim no doubt sent himself. The attack resulted in the deaths of Congressman Ryan, 3 journalists being Don Harris, cameraman Bob Brown, and photographer Greg Robinson, as well as the
R.I.P. bro, what the
Parks, with several others being injured. The now deceased Bob would actually manage to record the full attack, though the tape is heavily damaged and was developed only after his death, as it was found still in the camera upon recovering his body. Though shortly after the horrific shooting, Jones would instruct his over 900 devotees to engage in their final act as their so-called enemies were closing in. Jones and his subordinates prepared a large vat of Flavor Aid and laced it with cyanide.
Oh no.
Totaling to 918 drank the Flavor Aid and were subsequently poisoned and killed. There were only 2 known survivors of the cult that resisted drinking it. NBC has never revealed how much footage they were holding of that day, though whilst an hour of it surfaced online in 2014,
what
they
the
revealed
fuck?
that on the day of the attack alone, they have over 13 hours of footage that we might never get to see. It was also reported
how do you have 13 hours just gone? You just don't show people.
Moments of the cult, as Jones instructs them to drink, and the 918 suffering and screaming in pain and regret. The tape has since been found and published, but the footage recorded by the NBC remains lost. And before we end today's video, let me talk about
how dare you try to come in here and put this ad in when you just told me this these terrible stories. Really? After all of that I hear, you're trying to throw in this Surfshark? Really? You're trying to get your bag at the expense of my distraughtness that you just really, dude?